right now, we don't know the motive of the killer. We don't know whether the killer is set out to target police officers or whether he gunned them down as they responded to a call. Regardless of motive, the death of these three brave officers underscores the danger that police across the country confront every single day. And we as a nation have to be loud and clear that nothing justifies violence against law enforcement. Attacks on police are an attack on all of us and the rule of law that makes society possible.
All right, that was Obama reacting to the killing of three police officers earlier today in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 3 others were also shot. Donald Trump responded to the president's speech. He tweeted the following: "Our country is totally divided. Our enemies are watching. We are not looking good. We're not looking smart. And we are not looking tough." Trump continued with this tweet. He said, "President Obama just had a news conference, but he doesn't have a clue. Our country is divided on the crime scene, a divided crime scene, and it will only get worse." Here with reaction tonight, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. You almost became vice president this past week.
You did all you could.
Yeah, well, apparently, good to see you.
Good to see you.
You wrote a really nice column, and you were really happy with Mike Pence as vice president.
Yeah, you know, people don't realize this, but Calista served in the Ag Committee and worked with Mike when he was a freshman, so she's known him for his whole career. Mike and I, he used to use my GoPack training tapes when he first ran for the state legislature, and he describes himself as a Reagan, Kemp, Gingrich Republican. So
I asked him about that. Yeah.
At one level, I've got to say, Mike, glad to have you on the team.
Yeah.
And I think for what Trump needed to do right now, which I think is reassure the traditional party, I think that Mike is frankly stronger than I am. I think there are a lot of traditionalists who, they don't want a bomb thrower, they don't want somebody who's out there making noise every morning. And Mike is going to, he's steady, he's solid, he was a very good governor.
So a good compliment then to Trump? I
think so. I think it's one of the cases where you got two guys who are different, but they're different in the way that between the two of them, they fit the whole bill.
Yeah. It's interesting, but there was a report today, you will serve in some capacity.
Look, we are in terrible trouble. We're in terrible trouble at home, where the president, tragically, after 7.5 years, has created the worst race relations in 17 years, according to Gallup. We are in trouble in an economy where 25 million Americans have dropped out of the middle class. We're in trouble internationally with things like Nice and Turkey and the things that are going on. No serious citizen could, I think, avoid the duty to try to be helpful to a new president, particularly if he's trying to do what you believe in. So I've told Donald that I'm very prepared to work with him and to develop things that I think would help us very dramatically accelerate going in the right direction. And I think he and I have a pretty good understanding that, I'd have a substantial role in trying to rethink this stuff, because I spent all my adult life on these things.
Yeah, would it be an official capacity? Well, it will be official. Would it be Secretary of State?
No, I think, You
think it's a different role?
First of all,
it's
very premature to worry about it, because he has to win the election.
It's not a worry, I understand. Yeah. But you really are confident he will win. You've told me.
I think the odds are very high he's going to win. I think they get higher every week as we learn more about Hillary, as we see the failure of the Obama policy in the Middle East, as we see the failure of their terrorism policy, as we see the failure of their domestic economy, and now as we see the failure of their policy in the inner city. I mean, again, you look around, and every time you turn around, there's some way in which Hillary Clinton and the team she represents is failing America.
How can somebody who 57% of the American people think should have been indicted over the email scandal, and 67% of the American people think is dishonest and untrustworthy, how could such a person with those numbers win?
Well, I think the numbers will get worse, by the way. I think the longer the conversation goes on, the weaker she'll get.
Yeah.
And I think the most amazing thing is people will look back someday and say, how did the Democratic Party sleepwalk into a convention when it was so clear, particularly after you had the FBI director's 14-minute indictment, and then all the different things we've learned, and I think there are more things coming. I mean, I think the Clinton Foundation is it's a cornucopia of corruption. It has so many different things we're going to learn about in the next month or so. It's amazing to me that the Democrats are just blindly following her as though none of this matters.
You think?
We're now witnessing police officers, law enforcement, the front line of our defense in our towns and our cities, targeted, ambushed, lying in wait. They're now bringing them in and assassinating our police officers. What is your reaction to Baton Rouge and Dallas?
Well, this is a war against the police and against our civilization, fully as much as Nice or Orlando or San Bernardino are a war against our civilization. I think, one, we should pass a law that says if you advocate killing police, that is in fact incitement, and it ought to be a felony. I mean, we don't have to tolerate people going
That's
around
called a
saying-
terroristic threat, isn't it?
Yes, and so we should apply that directly. Two, I think that we should equip the police with the most modern and most sophisticated defensive things so that they have the best Kevlar jackets, they have the best protection against attack, and recognize that, we're asking them to take on what's normally a dangerous job in what has become a really dangerous environment, caused in no small part by Barack Obama's willingness to routinely blame the police even when he's totally wrong and has no information.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I just played a montage of him being critical of police. As we now look in retrospect, and through the prism of history here a little bit, and the Cambridge Police acted stupidly. If Trayvon would have been my son, I would have looked like my son, or that could have been me 35 years ago. Or going after, he's a constitutional attorney, going after and speaking out without any evidence, without any due process against what happened in Ferguson. Very strongly he speaks out, and rushing to judgment. And yet we have 3,470 plus people since he has been president killed in Chicago. He's mentioned Chicago 9 times.
Right, and done nothing effective.
Okay, so why, if it's a high profile racial case, he can be wrong? Yeah, I call him a 4-time loser on these cases. He was wrong every time when he spoke out early, and yet he says virtually nothing with such a disparity of numbers.
I think that the Democrats, this is as true of Hillary Clinton as it is of Barack Obama, Democrats are embarrassed by the failure of their policies. They are incapable of taking on the government employee unions, including the teachers' unions, and so they're not allowed to do anything. I mean, if Hillary Clinton were to get up tomorrow morning and say, the schools in Baltimore are so bad, we ought to have the right to choose a school of your choice, the teachers' union would disown her and she might lose the convention next week.
Pretty scary. All right, we'll get back to this. We'll have more with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, coming up right after the break. Also, coming up later tonight.
The way President Obama got us out of that war was a disaster.
But do you want to get us back in there?
No, I want to win.
Donald Trump and his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, they sat down for their first TV interview together. We're going to play some of the highlights. We'll get reaction. Also, Donald Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, is here. He'll join us as we continue from the site of the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. It's Hannity on the road.